Hey guys, so I'm back. I'm not sure what's going on with my camera. Hopefully I'm not sideways right now. Looks like I might be. Anyway, got my brake lines done. Thank God. Such a pain. This happens, when you're incorporating, you're buying stock replacement brake lines for your car, and then you go and put Wilwood component master cylinder, proportioning valve, residual pressure valves, and you're gonna have to mess with stuff. That's just the way it is. But that's okay. There's always a workaround for everything, really. And if it's not, you probably shouldn't be doing it. You're probably doing something wrong if there's no workaround for it. But in this case, I just had to push my wussy side aside and just get after it. And now I'm done with messing with these brake lines. I'm pretty sure if they hold fluid. But I wanted to show you where I ended up with all that tinkering I had to do. So let me get underneath the car and I'll show you. All right, so this is where I ended up. So this is the rear line residual pressure valve. That's a 10 psi unit. Here's my passenger front line. Still got the little protector thing on it. And here's the back line feeding into this. And then here's my front driver line. I only had to use one of these little couplers. Everything is tight, including these fittings right here. The ones that go from the proportioning valve to the master cylinder are going to be the two that I undo when I go to bench bleed the master. But I wanted to just show you guys where I ended up with all this room now. So I've got, column coming through here. It's a busy little area, so I wanted to keep everything really close to the inner well. So hopefully that affords me all the room I need. And so I just went through and tightened all my fittings, basically front to back. I usually just put them in place, make sure that they're threaded. I don't have to mess with it anymore, but come back and tighten everything. And I will check everything for turning travel and make sure these hoses aren't going to get caught up on anything. But I wanted the whole system to be sealed and actually be able to accept fluid without leaking. And I am there, I believe. I'm pretty sure I'm there. So I've got everything tightened up front to back. I basically started from the front and moved back and hit every fitting that I could touch and look at, even the ones that I couldn't actually see. So that's where I'm at. So I'm gonna go pull this master off and do a bench bleed. For those of you who hadn't seen that, you're gonna see it now. All right, so I've got my master cylinder out. So here's the thing with master cylinders and bench bleeding them. You can actually do it in the car only if you can get a full stroke of this piston here. Meaning you can actually, so in other words, don't hook up your pedal and just by hand push this rod slowly until all the air bleeds out. So a lot of guys swear you can't do it unless it's in a bench. That's actually not true. I've had bad luck by doing it in a car, but those times were only because I was utilizing the pedal to stroke this push rod. So don't rely on the pedal because they don't always have full travel. Ideally you want them to have full travel until the piston stops, or maybe just before that even. And just that tiny little end play of not being able to stroke the piston all the way will not allow the air all to escape from this. So the second thing, once you put it in a vise, you want to make sure you don't damage it, obviously. And the one that I have, obviously, is powder coated black, and I didn't want to scratch it by putting in my vise here. So I have some rubber vise jaws here in place, whether like urethane or whatever, from the cheap store. And so now I have it leveled. This is also important too, or somewhat important, I guess you could say. To get an efficient bleed, you want to make sure your master cylinder is as level as possible within reason and just not super whacked. And obviously tight enough so it doesn't fall out when you push on the push rod, and you don't want to clamp it too hard to where it'll break this flange here too. So there's a few things to think about when you're doing this, in other words. And the reason I took it out of the car is because I need to install this gasket here. This goes between this flange and the firewall to make a good seal between the passenger compartment and the engine compartment. So that was the reason why I did that, or had to remove it. And I would have much rather just left it in and did it, but that's just mock-up. You know, you got to mock it up, make sure it fits first. So now, obviously removing the cover screws here. Make sure this thing is dust free. Don't want any dust getting in there if you can help it, or more importantly, water. I would avoid doing this if it's raining outside and you're outside working, because brake fluid absorbs water. On the other half of that token is you can depend on water to get rid of your brake fluid mess. So there's that. So basically, if you were to spill brake fluid on your paint on accident, it's not going to make the paint fall off immediately, but you better spray it down with some water, and it will neutralize the brake fluid. I don't know what that little rubber thing was in there. So yeah, there's some couple little things in here that I'm trying to get out before I pour brake fluid in there. So now I'm going to employ my little fittings. These little fittings come from Wilwood in every kit I've ever purchased, and they're different sizes. And when you rig up your master cylinder and the vise, you want to make sure that the ports that you're going to be utilizing are actually exposed. Otherwise you can't screw these little adapter fittings in. So I do like to give these a little bit more, one more of a crank with a wrench. Not much of one, but just enough to seal it. And then this guy right here, this guy here is actually designed to go right here in the center. So we'll just use that. And I'll show you why that is. So this one tube goes here. And one goes here. No zip ties needed. You just have to run these guys in. You want to run them down through that little clip and make sure that they are submerged in brake fluid. So that way you can't suck back any air. Actually, I'm going to use this other side here. Yeah, they make a bigger end and a closer end. I'm going to utilize the closer end on this one. It's just a tighter clamp. There we go. All right, let me go grab my wrench. Now this might be a redundant step, but it's always kind of a good for peace of mind for me. Brake fluid everywhere is never a good thing. Just like a half turn is all I'm saying on these guys. I mean, you obviously can't over tighten them. You leave the threads right where you left them in there, and that'll be another hassle. So let me grab some brake fluid. I'll be right back. All right, so I use this type mostly because I have it for dirt bikes and side-by-sides, but I believe in this stuff. In fact, any .4 or better is good, but I mean, just has to be hydraulic fluid. And the reason I like this stuff because it has a much higher boiling point, so you can put a lot more heat into the brakes and without absorbing the heat into the fluid as much. So here we go, filling up the rear. I'm gonna go about halfway, make sure there's no leaks. always put the cap right back on the brake fluid container because, well, moisture in the air. And so you want to get full strokes out of this, and you want to make sure that you do short ones and long ones, and holding your master cylinder so it doesn't go flying. You can see the bubbles coming out, and you're going to see it sucking back and forth. That's fine. That's all good. Don't worry about that. It's totally fine. You just want to make sure you do the short ones and the long ones over and over. You don't want to do it fast. And when you're doing the full stroke, you got to bottom out that piston all the way. Still no leaks. That's good. Helps to have something for your hand so it doesn't get torn up. And there's a boot. It goes on the inside here. Honestly, you just can't do this enough. So if you think you need to do it more, then just do it more. It's worth your time while it's off, because no one wants to have to take it off again. That's going to suck, especially with fluid in it. You'll have to reinstall these lines, and it's going to be a mess. And there will be water involved, and that's never good. But yeah, I've done this on my orange truck before, replacing. I went through a couple master cylinders on that truck trying to find the right pressure, or the pressure I liked the most as far as pedal input goes. And I ended up bleeding the master in the truck, and I just couldn't get brakes. Over and over and over for a whole day, I just beat my head against the wall. So I called Willwood, and they said, well, did you bleed it on the bench? And I said, well, what's the difference? You know, you're bleeding it here or in the car. Like, what's the difference? And they're like, well, if you don't bottom this piston out in the master cylinder, you're not getting that last little bit of air out of there, which prevents you from having a solid pedal. So I guess that makes sense, I said. So I went on my merry way and did it, and what do you know, it worked. So always listen to the experts. Now you're always going to have bubbles inside these little return tubes. That's going to be normal. What you don't want to see is bubbles coming out of the master cylinder itself, like on the bottom, from the bottom of the master cylinder up. That means you still have air in the system, but you're always going to have a little bit of bubbles trapped in these guys. Okay, so all right, so now let me go make sure the car is prepped to receive this. So I wanted to point out that I've got the bolts in my firewall, and they're actually protruding through a factory bracket, or just basically a plate And then I believe this plate just provides structural integrity to the firewall because it's getting so much pressure put on it. That's probably why it's there. But I wanted to note that I actually used some just regular old nuts to mock this master cylinder in place. And these don't have any sort of locking device on them or any sort of locking mechanism on the nut. They would require just like a regular split washer. And the kit actually comes with a nylock set for these fasteners. So just so you know, I'm not going to use those. I'm going to utilize the nylocks, but because these bolts aren't welded in the backside, I'm going to have to wait for a second set of hands, which I will have tomorrow, to help me tighten this up. But I'm going to just go ahead and install the master and hook up these lines, and then I can put the top on it, and we'll bleed brakes tomorrow, most likely. So here we go on that. This is probably the time you realize why they only say to fill these up halfway. This is probably why. Because when you go to do this, make sure there's no brake fluid going anywhere. Just get these guys out of the way for now. Got my gasket in there. Pull this proportioning thing out of the way. If I can get this gasket over these bolts. Let them going too wonky. Okay. Man. This is a delicate dance here. Don't you fall. Oops. Yeah, I have really mixed feelings about getting a black master cylinder, because I was just thinking, God, it would just corrode and rust with the brake fluid getting on it. But I took a chance, just in the hopes of making it kind of blend in with everything. But I know it doesn't. A trained eye would see it and go, oh, that's not factory. I mean, obviously, but I'm looking for performance in braking. I wanted to not just go, but actually stop too. Otherwise, why wouldn't you just run drums in the front? Oh, come on. Get on there. Just struggling a little with this. It's a good time to reflect on when I fit these brake lines, because if you don't fit them and you just go for it like this without having fit them, because you're gonna have a problem and it's gonna be a mess and you're gonna hate yourself for it. Or maybe you won't. Oh, come on, man. And I fit these and I'm still struggling, so that should tell you something. Sure I didn't miss anything, especially brake fluid. Don't have any major problems that I could see. Gotta go over everything. Yeah, you can see how that I am disconnected up there. But I got the 2 bolts or the 2 nuts on there to just keep her in place. But I don't see anything leaking real bad. Now you guys might be wondering, well, I guess let me rephrase that. You might be wondering why there's no curly cues here. And I thought about that for a second, and I'm thinking, well, curly cues are for when the body and frame move away from each other, or even in unison, or they're basically a safety for when the car sways or stretches. It doesn't pull a brake line out. But if you look at everything here, it's got plenty of give, or basically in my mind I'm allowing plenty of flexibility here between all of these lines. So to me, and this is a subframe or a unibody construction car, I mean, subframe connectors aside, even if I didn't put those on, I'd still do this. And I've got the inner fender brackets from US Car Tool as well, and I'm not worried about it. It's not if it was a body on frame car, I probably would do a curly, but in this case I decided against it, so that's why. But I think we're gonna be just fine. I hope. Where's this wind coming from? Okay. Now, yes, I'm glad I didn't use that junction there. That's where the junction would be. It just would have complicated things too much. And I was gonna have to use adapters to get the brake lines to fit into it. It just, I don't know, it just didn't work for my application. Your results may vary, but anyway, master cylinder in. Next is connecting the brake pedals and bleeding the brakes.